The Harrington family had a rule: staff ate in the kitchen. It was not written anywhere. There was no laminated sheet pinned to the refrigerator, no clause buried in the employment contract Rosa had signed at the agency office on a rainy Tuesday in Manila. It was simply understood, the way many things in the Harrington household were simply understood, through a glance, a tone, the particular silence that followed a suggestion no one intended to honor. Rosa de la Cruz had learned to read that silence within her first week. She followed the rule without complaint, without visible frustration, carrying her plate of rice and whatever remained from the family's dinner to the small wooden table beside the kitchen window, where she ate alone and watched the garden fill with evening light. She had been with the Harrington family for 3 years by the time any of this began to matter. 3 years is long enough to know a family better than they know themselves. Rosa knew that Mr. Harrington, Gerald, took his coffee at precisely 6:47 each morning and grew irritable if the mug was not already on the counter waiting. She knew that Mrs. Harrington, Catherine, cried in the downstairs bathroom on the last Sunday of every month, always briefly, always quietly, always alone. She knew that 12-year-old Ethan was secretly terrified of the dark but performed fearlessness for his father with exhausting dedication. And she knew that 8-year-old Lily, small, serious, magnetic Lily, was the kind of child who notices everything the adults around her assume goes unnoticed. It was Lily who first asked Rosa to sit at the dinner table. "You should eat with us," Lily said one evening, pulling out the chair beside her with both hands, the legs scraping against the marble floor. Catherine looked up from her phone. Gerald looked up from his newspaper. The moment held for exactly 3 seconds before Gerald said, without cruelty but with absolute finality, "Rosa is comfortable where she is, sweetheart." Rosa had already begun walking toward the kitchen, plate in hand, smile already in place. "Of course, Mr. Harrington." "Thank you, Lily." She said it warmly, completely, leaving no room for pity or protest. That was Rosa's particular genius, and none of them recognized it as genius at all. Her English, to the Harrington family, was a source of quiet entertainment. Her accent carried the soft, rounded architecture of Tagalog underneath every sentence, vowels landing in places that sometimes surprised English ears, consonants occasionally traded for their nearest neighbors. Gerald had mimicked her once at one of Catherine's cocktail parties, a dinner for 12, candlelight, the good wine, dropping his voice into an approximation of her cadence, saying something she had apparently said that afternoon about Lily's school bag. The guests had laughed. Catherine had smiled with her eyes down. Neither of them noticed that Rosa was passing through the hallway at that precise moment, carrying a tray of appetizers she had been asked to bring from the kitchen, and that she had heard every word with perfect clarity. She set the tray down on the sideboard. She returned to the kitchen. She washed the preparation bowls. She did not think about it again that evening, because thinking about it would have cost her something she was not willing to spend. Catherine corrected Rosa's pronunciation regularly, and always in front of the children. "It's schedule, Rosa, not schedule." Or, "The word is frustrated, not frustrated." She delivered these corrections with the particular brightness of someone who believed she was being helpful, her head tilted slightly, her smile patient and wide. Ethan ignored these moments. Lily watched them with an expression Rosa privately recognized as grief, a child absorbing something she knows is wrong but does not yet have the language to name. Rosa received every correction with a nod and a thank you. What none of them knew, what Rosa had decided, very deliberately, that none of them would know, was that before Manila, before the visa application and the agency fees and the 18-hour flight and the taxi from Heathrow that had cost her nearly everything she had left, Rosa de la Cruz had spent 12 years as one of the most recognized broadcast journalists in Southeast Asia. She had anchored the primetime news bulletin on the Philippines' largest national network. She had filed reports from flood zones and election headquarters and the offices of heads of state. She had conducted a 40-minute live interview with a sitting president that was replayed on international feeds for 3 days afterward. She had won 2 National Journalism Awards, one of which sat in a box in the storage unit she rented outside London for £40 a month, wrapped in a cloth she had carried from home. She had a voice that could fill an auditorium without a microphone. She knew this because she had done it. But she had also made choices. Her mother had become ill in the year after her husband left, and the journalism salary, respectable by Manila standards, did not stretch across the cost of specialist care in the way Rosa needed it to. The agency had offered a placement in London with a family that paid 4 times what she earned at the network. She had done the mathematics on a Tuesday afternoon, looked at her mother's medication schedule, and made the only decision available to her. Pride, she had concluded, was a luxury she would store carefully and retrieve when the time was right. She did not speak about her past to the Harringtons. They did not ask. In their imagination, Rosa existed fully in the present tense, in the school runs and the packed lunches and the laundry folded with the kind of precision they had come to expect without remarking upon. This was not cruelty. It was simply the particular blindness of people who had never needed to see. Lily was the exception. Lily always had been. It was Lily who discovered the notebooks. Not by snooping. Rosa had left one on the kitchen counter one morning, a small blue journal, and Lily had looked at a single open page before Rosa collected it. The page was dense with notes, analytical, sharp, structured like the outline of a documentary script. Lily had not said anything. She had simply looked at Rosa with that expression, the grief and recognition expression, and gone to school. That afternoon she had asked Rosa, very quietly, in the car, "Do you miss it? Whatever you used to do before?" Rosa had kept her eyes on the road for a long moment. "Sometimes," she said. "But I'm here now. And here is where I want to be." It was not entirely a lie. She loved Lily with the uncomplicated, wholehearted love that sometimes finds its way between people who are not related but recognize something essential in each other. She was not unhappy. She was waiting, the way a musician waits through a long silence in a composition, knowing that the silence is part of the music, that what comes after requires the quiet before. 3 weeks before everything changed, Lily's school sent home a letter about the Year 3 talent show. Lily brought it to Rosa first, before her parents, tucking it into Rosa's hand in the hallway with the gravity of someone delivering classified intelligence. "I want to do a speech," Lily whispered. "Not a song. Not a dance. A real speech. About something real." Rosa looked at her for a moment. "What do you want to say?" Lily thought about it with her whole face, the way she thought about everything. "I want to say that people are more than what they look like on the outside. That you can't tell what's inside someone just by looking." She paused. "I think I learned that from you." Rosa had folded the letter carefully and slipped it into the blue notebook. That evening, after Gerald had finished his dinner and Catherine had taken her glass of wine to the sitting room and Ethan had retreated to his bedroom, Rosa sat with Lily at the kitchen table, the small wooden one by the window, the one Rosa used alone every night, and they began to build the speech together. Rosa did not write it for her. She asked questions. She listened. She said, "Start with the thing that surprises people. Start with the sentence no one is expecting." Lily wrote in her careful, rounded handwriting, crossing words out, trying again, asking Rosa to read sentences back to her so she could hear how they sounded. She did not know, yet, what she was about to hear. She did not know that the woman sitting across from her, patient and quiet and apparently unremarkable, had spent 12 years teaching a nation how to listen. She did not know that Rosa had been rehearsing silence the way other people rehearse speeches, carefully, purposefully, knowing exactly when the moment would come to stop. She did not know that the talent show auditorium, 3 weeks from now, would be the room where the waiting finally ended. But Rosa knew. She had known for some time. She looked at Lily bent over her notebook, tongue between her teeth, fighting for exactly the right word, and she felt the particular satisfaction of someone watching a door they built from the inside, quietly, patiently, without anyone noticing, swing wide open at last. The speech was going to be extraordinary. Not because Rosa would write it, but because Rosa had finally decided to stop disappearing. The morning of the talent show, Rosa ironed Lily's dress twice. Not because it needed it the second time. The pale blue cotton was already perfect, crisp, and smooth as a page before the first word, but because ironing was the thing Rosa did when she needed to think without appearing to think. The iron moved in slow, deliberate strokes while Lily ate her breakfast across the kitchen, swinging her legs under the chair, running through her speech in a whisper so quiet it was almost breath. Rosa listened to every word without appearing to listen. This, too, was something she had spent years perfecting. Gerald was already gone. Early morning meeting, the kind that could not be rescheduled, the kind that had been cannot be rescheduled 4 times in the last 2 months alone. Catherine was upstairs, taking longer than usual to get ready, which Rosa understood to mean she was either nervous for Lily or performing the version of herself she wore to school events, put together, bright, slightly louder than she was at home. Ethan slouched into the kitchen at 8:15, poured cereal without speaking, glanced at Lily's rehearsing lips, and said, with the devastating honesty of a 12-year-old, "What if you forget the words?" Lily looked at him calmly. "Then Rosa will be there." Ethan looked at Rosa. Rosa placed the iron carefully on its rest and said nothing, because nothing was exactly the right answer. She had already decided. The decision had not come dramatically. No sleepless night, no journal entry, no moment of cinematic clarity in front of a mirror. It had simply settled into her one afternoon the previous week, quiet and complete, the way certainty arrives when it has been building for long enough. She would be in that auditorium. She would sit in the third row, where she could see Lily's face clearly. And if Lily needed her, if the moment came when the words dissolved and the silence became something heavier than a pause, Rosa would walk onto that stage. She had not told anyone this. It was not a plan she needed permission for. The school hall smelled of fresh paint and old wood and the particular nervous energy of 200 families pressed into a space designed for half that number. Rosa found her seat in the third row, slightly left of center, sightline clean and direct to the microphone stand at the front of the stage. Around her, parents arranged themselves with phones already raised, programs already open, the ambient murmur of people performing patience while secretly counting down. Catherine sat 2 seats to Rosa's right, elegant and faintly perfumed, scrolling through something on her phone before putting it away with visible effort. Gerald had arrived at the last possible moment, tie loosened, sliding into the seat beside Catherine with a whispered apology that Catherine received with a smile that said everything and nothing. Rosa watched the stage. 12 acts before Lily. She counted them not with impatience but with the trained attention of someone who had spent years in broadcasting, understanding that timing was not incidental, it was everything. She knew how rooms moved. She knew how attention built and sagged and needed anchoring. She knew that the act immediately before Lily, 2 girls performing a recorded duet with enormous enthusiasm and approximate accuracy, would leave the audience in exactly the right mood. Warm, generous, slightly relieved it was over. She was correct. Lily walked onto the stage to the sound of a room settling into itself. No dramatic entrance. No costume. Just Lily, small and serious and carrying her single index card the way someone carries something they may not end up needing. She reached the microphone. She adjusted it slightly, both hands, the way Rosa had shown her. She looked out at the audience. Rosa watched her find the third row, slightly left of center. Their eyes met for exactly 1 second. Then the silence happened. It was not the performing kind, not the breath an experienced speaker takes before the first sentence. It was the other kind. The kind that has weight. Lily's eyes dropped to the index card. Her lips moved without producing sound. Rosa saw it happen in real time the way you see weather change, gradually and then all at once. The card was shaking very slightly. The audience could not see the shaking, but Rosa could, because Rosa had been watching Lily's hands for 3 years and knew every language they spoke. She was on her feet before the thought completed itself. Later, Catherine would tell someone at a dinner party that it had happened so quickly, that Rosa was simply suddenly there, on the stage, as if the distance between the third row and the microphone had been a formality she had chosen to skip. Rosa did not run. She walked with the particular composure of someone who has crossed distances that make an auditorium aisle look like nothing at all. She reached Lily, placed one hand, light, warm, unhurried, on her shoulder, and turned to face the microphone. What came out of Rosa de la Cruz's mouth was not what the Harrington family expected. It was not the voice they knew from school-run conversations and dinner instructions and gently accented reminders about homework and bedtime. What came from the microphone was 12 years of broadcast journalism, a voice tuned by thousands of live hours into something that did not merely fill a room but reorganized it. Clear, warm, authoritative without arrogance, carrying the audience the way a current carries something without effort, without force. The kind of voice people instinctively lean toward without knowing why. She spoke directly to the audience with total ease. My name is Rosa. I'm here to help my favorite person say something she means very much. A pause, perfectly measured, the kind that invites rather than demands. She's been working on this for 3 weeks, and everything she's about to tell you is true. She turned slightly toward Lily. Ready? Lily looked up at her. Something shifted in Lily's face. The weight lifted, or rather, redistributed, spread between them in a way that made it manageable. She nodded once, and then Rosa guided her through it. Not by reading the speech for her. By doing what great journalists do, asking, prompting, creating the conditions in which someone else's truth finds its way out. Tell them what you believe, Rosa said softly, and Lily said it. Tell them where you learned it, Rosa said, and Lily looked at her and said, from someone who let people treat her like she was small, because she knew she wasn't, and she was waiting for the right moment to show them. The auditorium was completely still. Not the silence of boredom or confusion, the silence of 200 people simultaneously understanding that they are witnessing something they will remember. The applause, when it came, was the standing kind. Backstage was narrow and warm and smelled of hairspray and cardboard stage props. Lily held Rosa's hand with both of hers, the index card still crushed into one fist, her face incandescent with the particular joy of someone who has done the thing they were most afraid of. Other children moved around them. A teacher said something warm and official. Rosa heard none of it clearly because she was looking at the door at the end of the corridor, through which she could see the auditorium beginning to empty, and through which Gerald Harrington was now walking with an expression she had not seen on him before. He looked, for the first time in 3 years, uncertain. He stopped in front of her. Catherine was a step behind him. Ethan stood slightly apart, hands in pockets, looking at Rosa with the wide, recalibrating eyes of someone quietly rewriting a story they thought they already knew. Gerald opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. That voice. He said it not accusingly, not apologetically, almost to himself, the way someone says something when the words are catching up to the understanding. Why didn't you ever? He stopped again. Rosa looked at him with the full, calm attention she had always possessed and never deployed in his direction. You never asked who I was, Mr. Harrington. You only saw how I arrived. It was not said with bitterness. It was simply true, and truth delivered without anger tends to land in places anger never reaches. She watched it land. She watched Gerald look at Catherine and Catherine look at the floor and Ethan look at Rosa with something that was unmistakably respect. Lily pressed closer to Rosa's side, still holding her hand. Rosa reached into the small bag she had carried to the auditorium and produced a folded piece of paper, a crayon drawing Lily had made that morning at the kitchen table, the small one by the window, without being asked. She had drawn 2 figures, one tall, one small. Beneath them, in Lily's careful rounded handwriting, my hero, Rosa. She placed it in Gerald's hands, not as a gesture of forgiveness or reproach, but because Lily had made it for the family and it belonged with them. Everything that needed to be said was already in it. What the Harringtons did not know, and would not know until Rosa told them the following Monday with the same quiet composure she had brought to every moment in their house, was that she had accepted a position the previous week. A senior editorial role at a Manila-based media organization, one that had been tracking her career before it paused and had waited, with impressive patience, for her to be ready. The salary was significant. The work was exactly what she was built for. Her mother's health had stabilized. The mathematics had shifted. The waiting was over. Some people leave because the place they are in becomes unbearable. Rosa had never found it unbearable. She had simply always known it was temporary, the way a river knows the shape of its banks without being defined by them. She had arrived with a purpose, fulfilled it completely, and now she was moving, as water moves, toward the place she had always been heading. The blue notebook was already packed.